future. There are no people in the future. No people at all. There are no people in the future. Where did all my people go? There are no people in the future. Let me try my people call. Where are all my people? Where are all my people? I guess I'll fly away now.
Hey, everybody, welcome. Yes, it is Monday, September 12th, 2022. Welcome back to Raging Chicken's Out to Coop Live. This is Kevin Mahoney, creator and founder of Raging Chicken. On Out to Coop Live, we talk to, progressives, activists, troublemakers of all sorts, right from our own backyards from across the country. Before I go any further tonight, I'd like to wish my favorite expat, Stu Ross, a happy birthday. Yes, he's fighting the good fight in Derry, Northern Ireland, and now he's got a new king to slay. So here's to a great year, Stu, even though he's probably well in bed by now. Well, I don't know, it's his birthday. Maybe he's out late. We'll see. He's also got 3 kids. So you can join us at the end of the week, too, as well, for our Friday Politics Roundup, where we break down the good, the bad, and the ugly in state and national politics. You can check out our once or twice monthly The Wednesday Show with Cyril Michaleko, the editor-in-chief of the Bucks County Beacon. He joins me to drill down into Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and international politics. You can get all our shows by subscribing to our podcast on Podbean's iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can help support the show by becoming a patron for as little as $5 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/rcpress and become a patron today. Want to thank you to all the new YouTube subscribers. Man, it's been feeling the love lately. Thank you so much for joining and becoming part of this community. You can help out the show right now by heading on over to our YouTube channel if you're not there already. Smash that subscribe button, like the stream for the show, and hit that notification bell so you know every time that we go live. And you know what? It's also, we're seeing the subscriptions and followers showing up on our podcast streams too as well. So look, if you got the time, you're on Spotify, you can check us on Spotify, you can check us on Apple Podcast, on Google Podcast, on Podbean, where everything's hosted. And leave us a review. Give us that kind of 5-star review. Leave us a little review. Tell us a little about why you like the show. And that helps other people find this show. And it's just another way that you can help support the work that we're doing here and help support all the great people that are doing the work in our community. You can also jump on our Discord server. Info on that is in tonight's show notes. For more PA Progressive Talk, you can tune in to the Rick Smith Show's live stream at 9 p.m. Eastern. His YouTube channel, Twitter, Facebook, wherever you're streaming, you're going to find him there. Make sure you subscribe to his podcast, too, as well. Find out all the information about Rick Smith Show by heading over to thericksmithshow.com for the latest across all his platforms. And you got to check out, if you haven't already, the Sisters of the Night Caucus podcast. The amazing PA women stirring the political cauldron behind this podcast rock the house. And you know where the bodies are buried. Make sure to follow them on Twitter at The Night Caucus. That's at The Night Caucus on Twitter. And subscribe to their podcast on Anchor, Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your podcasts. Attention all you gamers out there, The Game In, that's with 2 N's. The Game In is a Quakertown-based black family-owned gaming store. They're friends of the show, and they've got everything for retro N64s, the latest consoles, video games for all platforms, collectibles, action figures, Funko Pops, walls of Funko Pops. And look, we're back to school, so, they usually run the back-to-school special. Your kids get A's, they get a discount, It's kind of a cool thing. Check them out on their Facebook page and follow them on Twitter at The Game In with 2 N's. If you got a question about a game, you're looking for something hard to get, shoot them a message or drop them an email at thegameinpa@gmail.com. Special shout out goes to Jonathan Mann, as always, who wrote our intro song, There Are No People in the Future. Check out all his great stuff on his YouTube page and follow him on Twitter at SongOfDayman. That's at SongOfDayman on Twitter. And, we've been through the ringer here in Bucks County, so, look, how about this? How about we don't let Paul Martino and his oligarch friends buy our schools and push extremist politics in our community? Raging Chicken has teamed up with Levelfield to launch a truly community-rooted PAC to invest in organizing, supporting local and statewide progressive candidates, and unmasking the toxic organizations injecting our communities with right-wing extremism. We're putting small dollar donations to work to beat back the power of big money. You can get more information and drop your donation at ragingchicken.levelfield.net. That's ragingchicken.levelfield.net. And so tonight, in today's show, we've got kind of an open show tonight. Wanted to hear what's happening in your neck of the woods. If you want to hop in on our chat, our live chat on YouTube, that's the best place to go. I also put a link in there too if you are kind of, you think you might want to try to call into the show. You got something to say, you got some comments, you got some questions, you got an announcement. Put a link there that will kind of drop you into our audience on riverside.fm, and we can take your questions and calls from there. We haven't done that in a while. Matter of fact, when we first started doing the Out to Coop live show, we always had a call-in section of the show, and frankly, what happened was we got fewer and fewer calls, but then our chat, like our YouTube chat, really picked up. So we just kind of concentrated on that rather than trying to kind of manage it something else. But today, just thought I'd bring it back since, it's been a little chaotic here in the Raging Chicken family, and the Raging Chicken family. But here, Raging Chicken, in part because, it's been back to school. Kids are back to school. I'm back to school. It seemed that there at the beginning of August, if you recall, right at the beginning of August, I was sick for a bit, and that took a while just to kind of get back up on my feet and then play catch up and get ready. So it was just kind of a chaotic August that kind of flew by, and first 2 weeks of school have been going. But I've been sitting, once again, sitting at the dinner table with my son tonight, and and the conversation once again turned to like, why can't they make school better? And I've been thinking a lot about that. I was somebody. It's funny because I was somebody, and I think both my kids are very much like this too, as well. Is like, there's a difference between liking to learn and being curious about the world and wanting to read and all this kind of stuff, and liking school, right? Those are two different things. And I think to some degree, all kids, are at, at a point, especially in middle school and in high school, where you get really kind of frustrated with schooling. But, I do think that given the pandemic, and then given the kind of, the craziness in our school boards, it kind of leaches into the experience kids are having in school. And, one of the things, for example, is like, I constantly hear complaints, not just from my own kids, from some other kids too, as well, who are just sick and tired of having Trump and kind of right-wing and kind of racist stuff shoved down their throats, you know what I mean? Not by the teachers, by some of the other kids in school, but then they hear that echoed from the school board, and this is the year that, I think I mentioned this on the show a couple of weeks ago, that, my son has actually started watching school board meetings, and he's, thinking once, maybe he's got something to say at some of the school boards, about some of the things that, we should be paying attention to and should not be paying attention to. So it also occurred to me that, one of the long-term effects of, or I don't say effects, but long-term like legacy effects, or kind of unintended effects of the push towards standardized testing and, measuring everything through assessment and everything like this, has turned school into a different kind of animal, certainly than from when I was young. And when I was young, my school was by no stretch of the imagination was some kind of, glorious, nostalgic place to be. But it nonetheless has changed in character. And I do think the kids feel that, I certainly know the teachers feel that. I've told a story before about when there was these real strong pushes for high stakes tests, and when schools were losing funding if they didn't meet these kind of, abstract, crazy measures. And there were students at Kutztown who were going to be teachers, and they would go out in the field and they'd work for the first couple of years, and they'd come back. And the guy who used to run the secondary ed English program, his office is right next to mine. And so I hear some of these conversations, and you have these students that would come in, sometimes literally in tears, that they were so frustrated that they couldn't do what they were taught. Right. In terms of why they wanted to be a teacher and all the skills that they learned in school about like what they could do, and even in their student teaching. But instead, we're just having these kind of like, this kind of standardized testing shoved down their throats every stretch of the imagination, to the point where they didn't feel they had time for the basic, kind of nurturance skills that you give, kids. That's part of your job as a teacher. So there's been a legacy to that, and frankly, that's been a bipartisan endeavor. I mean, yes, No Child Left Behind was where this stuff got first kicked off during the George W. Bush regime. But it's only continued, and frankly, Democrats have often been, especially at the federal level, have often been some of the worst proponents of these standardized testing regimes, and we saw that certainly with the Obama administration, who actually, if you talk to a lot of teachers, he made the matters worse by relying more on this kind of data centric testing as a means by which to kind of find out what's happening in schools and to kind of quote unquote improve schools. I think all the intentions were there. I think the intentions were there to a certain degree with the George W. Bush administration too as well. But that's a long ways away from the conversations that were so much a part of my life, growing up in college and afterwards. What led me to a career in teaching and higher education was kind of thinking about what education could be and what education should be. And it's sad, to see all the stuff reduced to numbers. And there was a show on This American Life that was back in 2012. It was called, I think I just sent it to my son. I said, hey, you know what? You should really listen to this. It's really good. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. It's called Back to School, This American Life, from September 14th, 2012. And, again, you like anything on This American Life, there's going to be things that you're going to like, things you're not going to like. But what I found was so interesting about this is, it starts, part of the story is about this guy from the Chicago School of Economics, which is the Milton Friedman right-wing neoliberal kind of section of economics, is basically going in and say, well, if students can get a high school diploma in like a week of GED classes, why are they spending all this time in school? Certainly there must be a more efficient way of doing this. And as he went on and studied the schools and asked if there was a question about whether kids really needed to be in school for that long, he found out that what mattered in schooling to basically determine success, right? And success is always this squishy term, right? Because he didn't just mean just money and success, but mainly quality of life, a whole bunch of other measures that they use. And then he eventually couldn't answer it in economics. He brought in psychologists and kind of educational theorists and teachers and into this conversation, and they found out that the students who went and did their GED, right, still, even if they did good on their GED, doesn't matter, still performed at lower rates of success than students who completed their high school in kind of traditional settings, right, in school. And so it was a big question. Well, what's the difference, right? It's clearly, if it's about the content, if it's about the math skills, it's about the science skills, it's about, the STEM stuff, all these kind of particular things that are all measured by standardized tests. If it's about those skills, then they should be performing relatively equally, right? They found out, nope, not at all. And what the conclusions this group did, this study came to, was basically that it's the soft skills, right? It's the skills that have to do with building relationships and trust and kind of working on problems together, that kind of stuff. And hey, Nick, what's going on, man? Good to see you. And they also found out that, those are the exact kind of skills, these quote unquote soft skills, what some people call them as soft skills. Hey, Emily, welcome. People joining in chat. And it turns out that those kind of skills, trust building, relationship building, collaborative work, learning to negotiate differences and conflicts and differences of opinions and perspectives and all that kind of stuff. Those things are the hardest to measure on a standardized test. And the conclusions that this group is, it's been a while since I listened to it, but we're something along the lines of, look, we're measuring the wrong stuff. and we're measuring the stuff that's easy to measure, not the stuff that determines success or an educated human being or someone that is really capable of participating in kind of a democratic society, democratic culture. No, we're measuring the things that are easy to measure. And then we're changing the curriculum to teach to those skills that are easy to measure as opposed to the ones that are determined success, right? And it's fascinating to me. And like, the conversation I was having with my son at dinner tonight was, I was saying, look, I remember, the excitement that I had at one point in my life, when I started researching like the Montessori schools and Rudolf Steiner schools. And then my dissertation in part was a big chunk of it, where I was looking at all these kind of alternative schools from, the kind of late 1800s, early 1900s that ran through the kind of mid 20th century, that were labor colleges, that were labor schools, that were kind of like anarchist schools, that were like, these amazing spaces of learning, which where they were kind of opening up to kind of rethinking what it would mean to build a kind of a new world, like literally a new world, a new culture, right? They echoed some of the things that we saw with John Dewey, right? About, this split between mental and manual labor has got to be eradicated, right? That, hands-on learning is so important and so on, and other kinds of skills that are about community building, right? All this promise of what schools could be. And in a sense, we've really missed the boat on this one. And I tend to think that we have in schools, and this is happening in higher education now too as well. Everything is about assessment and measurement and all this stuff, and they want us to these particular things to measure. And as much as people will say that we are not, teaching toward the assessment, I've seen it happen. We're changing our syllabi, we're changing our curriculum, we're changing what we do in the classroom so that it fits these outcomes, right, that we put on for the assessment. We have to assess them, right? And it just alters what I've always found is the most important thing to do in the classroom. Now, let me be clear by saying that, I'm pushing back against these standardized tests and thinking about like assessment. I'm not saying like, hey, anything just goes. No, tests are important, right? Kind of critical engagement is important, right? These, the kind of things that we do in a classroom basis that you're kind of, grading students on kind of like how they're covering the material or understanding material or kind of their, what are the papers that they're writing or so on. It makes total sense. But you're doing it so that it could get fed back into the classroom, right? Ways you can continue the discussions about this stuff. Not to go out to some sort of like, for-profit institution to kind of hire a bunch of, like assessors, whatever, for the weekend to go and quote unquote grade standardized tests and in order to spit it back to the schools when it's not even valuable anymore. It's like the next academic year in order to tell the teachers what they're doing right or what they're doing wrong. I mean, I'm all for like. We always had, in my experience, I've always had discussions with other teachers about how to do our job better. What works, what doesn't work, all this kind of stuff. And that's all dynamic discussions. And we used to have some of these discussions even at Kutztown. And a lot of that's just been replaced by, well, the meeting time that we normally had to have these discussions, now we're having discussions about outcomes and assessment. So I don't know. So I've been thinking about, those other kinds of alternative schools and stuff. And I was saying to my son tonight, it's like the shame of it all is that, places like the Montessori school, Rudolf Steiner schools, all these ones, only the rich can afford them. Right? All these things about, hands-on learning and so on are kind of not there. Now I have to say, I saw, I got to visit my kids' school. And some of their STEM stuff, they're doing some really freaking cool stuff, I have to say. When you get down to the teacher level, right, especially when they're not completely strapped into like pegging everything to standardized tests, man, it's, there's like this kind of amazing situation, like this amazing STEM class where they're doing all sorts of really cool stuff, right? And you want that, all students to have access to that. right? I mean, learning like next generation technologies about, how to basically, you just got these like a fish in the classroom, and the fish like, they pee and they poop in the water, and that goes on to fertilize these plants, right? And they're growing these plants, they're actually producing like edible plants in this class, right? With no waste, right? I mean, things like that, I mean, are amazing. But then you're looking at, and my son will bring this up a lot too as well. We'll talk about what they do in Finland, right? Kids aren't going to school for 8 hours a day, preparing them for some industrial job someplace, right? Kids, no matter whether they're going to go on to like, I don't know, whether to go on and kind of study, go to college, or whether they're going to kind of work in on a farm, whether they're going to work in, gardens, or whatever it might be, right? But at their school, right, there's all this free time, and they don't have homework, right? They study for 45 minutes and they go outside, even in the snow. It blew my mind when I came down here in Pennsylvania that like kids, I don't know if this is true at all schools, but like I was blown away that when it snowed, the kids were not allowed to go outside. That blew my mind. But then like in Finland, they do this stuff. And Finland also performs at, if not the top every year, towards the top, right at the top on these kind of international measurements of kind of, like comprehensive education. Right? So those kids aren't strapped with homework every night. And they don't have, frankly, parents going and saying that we got to get our kids. My kids are super smart. My kids are super smart. Like, so my kids, let's do what's for my kids. What about the school? What about the school as a whole? Anyways, I did not even intend to talk about this, but it's pretty crazy. It's just nuts. I do want to give here. Hold on. I want to give this anything that's on your mind. Please drop it in the drop it in chat. If you want to try the the call-in, let me know. That'd be great. Yeah, that's right, Emily. Finland does pay its teachers really well. They pay their teachers well. They treat their teachers like professionals and kind of like valued members of society. And this country, we kind of rat on them, right? And you ask me, it's because, at the very core, we are not interested in everybody being educated. We're like, and this is true, Democrats and Republicans alike, right? And sometimes it's even Democrats even more, have bought so far into this meritocracy nonsense, right? That the cream rises to the top. Work hard, you succeed. And like, yeah, you deserve everything that you get because you worked hard, and those measurements that you do well on prove that you're, I mean, come on. Come on. We know it's money that drives this country. All this other, and meritocracy is just a rationale for going and justifying the elite nature of our culture. It's nuts. Nick also said, "Yeah, I also like the idea that the classroom is only the only classroom when you mentioned about not being allowed to go outside. That the classroom is the only classroom, right? The only place where you learn." True enough. Here, let me just I got to pull something up. I accidentally closed the tab, and I didn't want to do that. Kirsten kind of dropped me a note earlier when I heard this was going to be open phones tonight. Indivisible in the PA1, Bucks County, right, has got a postcard effort. Going on. Let me tell you the details of it in just a second. And I'll put a link. Copy this. I'm going to drop a link right in tonight's link for Bucks in, or I'll put PA01. PA, that's what she put. 01 Indivisible postcard event. And there it is. Just so here we go. It's from the postcard writers, Bands Off Our Bodies postcards. Now, polling shows, I'm just going to read from the websites for those folks who are listening, you want to check it out. Polling shows that when voters find out about Brian Fitzpatrick's anti-choice stance, they are far more likely to vote for his opponent. That's why we're sending postcards to more than 20,000 infrequent Bucks County voters. We need your help in writing them. Fill out the form below if you click on that link that I put in tonight's show notes. or that I put in tonight's chat, I should say. I'll try to remember to drop it in tonight's show notes too as well. You fill out that form from that link. It'll get you right there. And each packet, you're going to figure out how to get they're going to get a packet to you, and each packet contains 60 postcards and mailing labels, plus clear instructions on messaging, postage, and mailing. If you wish to donate postage and then mail the postcard yourselves, great. If not, we'll take care of it. That's the easy activity, and you could do it right from the comfort of your own home. Fantastic. Write 60 postcards. 240 of 500 slots are already filled. I'd love to see other folks sign up for there too as well. Matter of fact, yep, I'm doing that right now. Yep, so here we go. I'm signing up right now. Are you signing up right now? You taking a moment? Have you signed up already? I'm going to go ahead and sign up. This is how quickly it takes. Okay, I'm going to go. Just need your name. Will I donate postage? Ask you if you're going to donate postage or not. That's it. Your name, your email, your phone number, whether or not you'll donate postage, and then click sign up, and boom, you're done. Right? That easy. So there you go. So if you want to sign up for that too as well, that would be absolutely fantastic. Thank you, Kirsten, for even saying that. Kirsten, if you are on and you are listening and you want to try to kind of drop in and say a couple words, that would be awesome. I think, hold on a second. Let me see what we got here. I'm showing that we've got somebody in the... Nope. Showing that there's two people, so somebody might be jumping on, and we shall see. If that works, great. If not, then we'll try something else. Let me know. Let me know, if somebody is trying to call in and you're having some issues with it, please let me know, and I'll see if I can fix it, and we can send another link. Okay. So there's that. So I'm just curious, what else has been going on. And, look, I apologize. I want to say yet another in a whole string of apologies that here. Oh, okay. I see what's going on. Thank you, Nick. Let me go ahead and it says it's not live yet. Okay, we're going to go ahead and do this and see if that works. That's probably what it was. Okay. Yep. I think that was it. But anyways, the idea here is that I was going to say, my apologies, sorry, that a couple people have messaged me, say, hey, could you do me a favor? Could you help me get this out? Or what do you think about this? And passing some things on to me. And I've got to confess that it certainly I've been not as tuned in to what's happening in the social media world, or even the kind of like even broad-based political world for the past couple of weeks, getting school up and running. It's just I've had to dig in and make sure that I was getting off to a decent start for this year. There's that. I was also, realizing how close it is to our to the elections, right? Because let me see what's going on here. Yeah, and because of the elections, I had, I'm a judge of elections in my precinct, and had to have the form to the Board of Elections by past Friday. That really snuck up on me. Plus, the originally thing got delivered to the wrong address, which that was always that issue. But yeah, things are coming up quick. Things are coming up really quick. So we shall see. What else is happening out there, everybody? Anything interesting happening in your neck of the woods? Curious, going to pull this up. I don't know about you, but I have, well, I'm going to probably alienate a bunch of people now, but it is what it is. Yeah, the Queen of England's dead. Right? She died. She passed on. And yes, I understand and I could appreciate, this incredible life that all the things that she saw in her life and all that. But, I can also appreciate the idea that, yes, during this period of time, it was also some brutal goings on in the in the British Empire. Like, let's recall that, England's or Britain still kind of was a major colonial power, still ruled over India until after she was the queen. I don't know. I mean, I guess it's the kind of thing, for the same reason that I don't like, I'm not an Obama worshiper. I'm not like a royal worshiper. I just like, I've never been really big on kind of celebrity culture. It's not been my thing. And frankly, while I can appreciate, I guess, to some level, the historical context of the British family or the royal family and all this kind of stuff, but I mean, really, I don't know. And now there's a king, and I can't justify the amount of coverage that is going into covering, like every look. It's one thing if you're in England. It's one thing if you are, there and that's your country and that's part of what's going on. But to watch the practically wall-to-wall coverage kind of in this country is something crazy. And I know, look, people think what they think, right? And there's the majesty and the pageantry and all this kind of stuff. It's like, I just come back to the thing, like, I kind of said this on the podcast on Friday too as well, but the idea that, you rule through this bloodline, and why the bloodline is important is because it was endowed by God for you to have rule over there and justify the massive expenditure to kind of maintain and prop up this kind of like super wealthy, uber wealthy, rich life. And for the purpose of what seems to me to be kind of like nostalgia, is a little bit hard for me to stomach, right? So, pretty crazy. Nick just says, in other news, as the Bucks canceled lunch debt coalition won over $20,000 in lunch debt cancellation. WHYY's got a piece on it. Yeah, if you can, Nick, if you want to drop a link in the chat, I'll bring it up to talk about. That'd be fantastic. Congratulations to the folks on the Bucks Cancel Lunch Debt Coalition. You remember we had Nick on the show a while back, and he talked a little bit about this. $20,000 in lunch debt cancellation. Congratulations to everybody who's been putting that effort in. That's like another thing, right? Okay, if you want everybody to have equal education, and everybody should be fed too, right? And most teachers will tell you, right, if you want to know the greatest determiner of how well a student's going to do in class, tell them your zip code, right? Because poverty is a greater kind of determinant of like educational quality or educational advancement or attainment, if you will, how well they'll do in school and how far they'll go in education. Because why? Because they're hungry, they're poor. Poverty is. It's not like your, teachers' test scores. It's the kids are hungry, and they live in difficult environments because of poverty, because we've decided that that's the kind of society that we're going to live in. Yes, Senator Lindsey Williams said she's going to introduce a free universal meals in PA. That would be fantastic. To see that. I know that there's been several state legislators that have been pushing for universal meals. Governor Wolf also, Nick says, recently announced universal meals in October for all students. This is something that we can do and have a measurable impact on our kids' lives. And I talked about this on the show at one point too as well. It was like, that was one of the things that was remarkable during COVID, right? Is that once you take like the payment of lunch off the table, right? Once you no longer need to separate the kids out, but whether are they getting a free lunch, because they're poor, right? You take the stigma away and you just say, hey, lunch, anybody who wants it, any kid needs it who's hungry, you can have lunch. No questions asked. We're not going to kind of ask you to submit a tax form. We're not going to ask you to kind of sit there and show and prove to us that you're poor, and then be shamed in the lunch line when you can't, that your little like debit account like runs out of money. No, Just kids are kids. And if they're hungry and they need food, let them go get the food. How awesome is that? And I also say that, this is one of the things I've said before, is that you want to talk about that kind of lunch program as something that is kind of, people want to look at that as just kind of like a give out, right? It's an expenditure. And yet, if you have just an ounce of creativity, right, you could turn that into a driver of, say, community stability, community-based stability, right? So, for example, right, instead of partnering with, name your kind of like mass distribution of frozen foods to lunch or school's place, Cisco systems, right? That kind of thing. What if you partnered with local farmers? What if you partnered with people that are producing things locally? Right? Because you recognize that family farms and smaller farms are hurting. So imagine if those smaller farms, right, were actually you have a guaranteed buyer every single year to supply your milk, right? I mean, even if it's not, obviously, you right now, the way that our food systems are set up, there's no way that you're going to be able to supply everything, but you can supply quite a bit. I look at the hydroponics experiment going on in my kids' middle school, right? Imagine if you expanded that, you actually, you had all these kind of like empty fields, which are just grass sucking up water and, kind of doing nothing for the environment. What if you actually turned some of that kind of like open grassland into gardens and incorporated that within kind of the education, right? Where some of the kids with their teachers in the community could actually kind of participate in kind of maintaining those gardens. Imagine the kind of joy kids would get out of the fact that, like, oh my God, and now we're going to have a harvest day. Oh, harvest day, what? Yeah, and we're going to have fresh greens. We're going to have fresh food that's coming out of the stuff that we planted. All this kind of stuff. And then what if you said, okay, you've got there's a problem, something here that we planted this stuff and everything died. That becomes a science experiment. Things like that. I mean, this is not hard. It's about will, I hate to keep on harping on this, but like what something my son said tonight too as well. He's like, look, they're doing all these things, and he was talking about standardized testing and the kind of, whatever. So a whole bunch of stuff. Is that if they know that other models work and they work better, why don't they just do it? Right? And I can remember the time when I was asking the same question. I said almost the identical thing when I was like, like his age and a little bit older, like just kind of like, I don't understand it. Because, I still believed that back then, till, relatively recently, not like last year, but that, hey, it's not for lack of knowledge. It's not for a lack of kind of understanding. It's not for a lack of alternative models that work better. All those are there. We have the knowledge. We have the kind of the resources. We have the proof. We have the study. We have all that kind of stuff that shows us what we're doing in our schools is not the best way forward. The only thing that's lacking is the will and the politics. That's it. And if you think about it, that really gets to the heart of the matter. It's like, in this country, we have like more wealth is produced in this country than any place. The only thing that stands between us being a nation that is kind of lifts up everyone and kind of creates an entirely like amazing future for everybody is our will, right? And I mean our in this, in the way that our political systems are set up, the way that capitalism is set up, the way that our kind of, ideological infrastructure is set up, all that kind of stuff. So at some level, I was reminded tonight when I was talking to him, was like, there really is a lot of these solutions really are simple. We make them more complicated than they need to be. and we justify it through all this kind of, ideological infrastructure. And this is where, I think when that was one of my biggest disappointments about, say the Obama administration, is to see the reliance upon these, data, like specific kinds of data driven discussions, right? That as if everything could be reduced to a spreadsheet. And I'm the last person in the world that is going to tell you that we don't need data. No, we need good, hard data. That's absolutely true. But we'd like to actually do some more. Hey, I've got Nick on the line. Nick, can you hear me? Hey,
yes,
I
can.
Man. All right,
How are you?
All right, excellent. Look at that. What's going on, man? A long time no hear. How you doing?
Yeah, I know. Doing good. Sorry that we haven't chatted in forever. Honestly, it feels
dude, I've been following your stuff, and I get your you'll shoot me an email every once in a while, and I'm just like, oh man, with all this kind of stuff. But so that's pretty good news about what's going on with the lunch debt cancellation.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. I definitely wanted to jump in. What was it that you said? Of the political will, right?
Yeah.
Because that's sort of what it makes me think, with this situation in particular, and just of how let me do that, and just of how we could just in this country make sure that every single kid that goes to school has a free breakfast, free lunch, whatnot, right? Because, we already know, in terms of education, that is a huge driving factor into, how kids learn, into, how kids, might perform on, annoying standardized assessments and, so on. But just of how they actually live too, right? We want to make sure that kids are healthy because you don't know where they're getting their next meal for some of them.
Right.
And, we shouldn't have that stigma. We shouldn't have that shame. And, we can remove all of that by actually, providing it to every single child, through doing that. And, the other piece of political will too is, part of the reason and why, this got canceled or, whatnot, Billy, we had folks who showed up to a school board meeting. Show up to school board meetings. Bring this up. Your own school district can cancel their lunch debt. It was just free the past basically 2 years. And now it's set to be free again for, every kid come October through the end of the year. So, call on them. Tell them, they need to cancel this debt. Why is any single, child or, parent in debt for school lunches? What do they cost? A couple dollars? That's nothing in the grand scheme of things. And as I put in the chat too, what are the budget hawks going to say? It's inflationary to cancel school lunch debt?
Yes, they will.
Go right
yes,
ahead if you. Yeah, I know, but it's it's its own funny thing. But yeah, so I don't know. Just with that stuff, definitely. As I'll just plug and say, if folks at all are interested in some of the stuff that we had done and are interested in doing it within their own school district, you can, either reach out to myself at nicholasrmarcil@gmail.com, or more easily, if you just reach out to us collectively at nolunchdebt@gmail.com, be happy to, chat and, help you in trying to fight against this, because this debt does not have to exist. The same with student debt, the same with medical debt, so on and so forth. And thank you, Emily. I just now see your thing in the chat because I'm just on the Riverside thing. But yeah, so I don't know with that, and then also on Pashy news of the consolidation, horrific, and the sort of continuous problems with it. On a variety of different levels. I just continue to be wow, yep, we went down this path, not we willingly, but we forced to do so, thanks to the almighty Chancellor.
Right. Well, and I look at it like this, and I've said this on the show for the past several weeks, is that our contract negotiations are coming up here, so there's an opportunity, as I see it at least, there's an opportunity to really turn the spotlight on what's been happening. And again, when I say opportunity, I don't mean to kind of paint a happy face on this and say oh, it turns out that it's actually a good thing, right? No, it's not. it's really horrific what's going on, what's been going on with the Pashi. And I've heard, people talk, and I hear a lot about what's been going on at some of the quote unquote consolidated universities, and it's not pretty. It's not pretty for students. It's not pretty for faculty members. Lots of faculty members have lost their jobs. Programs are having difficulty staying afloat and kind of managing it. But Pashi, that out of the chancellor's office, certainly has got a great PR campaign going for itself. To try to paint everything in rose-colored glasses, through rose-colored glasses, to say that this is all going to work out for the best. And, it's not exactly clear. And I have to say, our kind of new old president of ABSCUF, the faculty union, Ken Mash, he was recently at Kutztown, and one of the things that he said is look, it's at some level, the chancellor made a decision that he's going to do whatever it takes to get Pashi more money, by appealing to those Republican legislators who are in a situation to kind of give that money. But the cost is that you destroy, a good chunk of the system. And, I'm still waiting. I'm still convinced that, Chancellor Greenstein, this has been, that we're going to see, I'm sure he's already writing his book about the success of transformation in higher education. And I'd love to see some of the people that are going to collaborate with him on that discussion. So, because there's always collaborators when we have this kind of thing, people that I think that some other folks wouldn't not necessarily expect. But that's where we're going to be. We're going to find out that we're going to push. Things are going to come to a head during these negotiations. Faculty are going to have to make a decision about whether or not they're going to strike if push comes to shove, and frankly. The concerning part is, of course, a lot of faculty are as demoralized as students have been, as a lot of us have been. So it's going to be an uphill battle. But nonetheless, it's we've done it before, and we proved that we can strike and we can be successful in strike. We do organize this good stuff. So we should. So Emily, the strike, we haven't even begun negotiations yet. Our contract doesn't end until June 30th, 2023. So negotiations have just formally begun, by filling out the announcement. There's a timeline where you have to first meet and so on. So Emily was asking, when is the strike vote? So we wouldn't know something like that until well into negotiations. So it wouldn't be until I would assume not until 2023 or so. But it's good. We're going to start seeing stuff come out. We're going to see a focus turn here. Go ahead, Nick.
And also to Emily's no, you were fine. I just saw Emily's other question. I wanted to answer it.
Yeah, please do.
Student lunch debt relief. No, that does not affect colleges and universities. I know that there was sort of the recent, why can't I remember what it was called? I went to Harrisburg to sort of fight on behalf of it, through hunger-free campus, like the hunger-free campus bill and such, and getting money in regards to that to help resource pantries and such at different universities throughout Pennsylvania. Now I will say though, I find it interesting. I've been doing some canvassing, and recently talked with someone who I had mentioned, because I think I was wearing my Westchester University hat, and had mentioned, oh yeah, I went to Westchester and such, and this kid who was 17 and was like, oh yeah, some of my friends go there, and he was like, but it is crazy, it was making me think of the intersection of a lot of these kinds of debts, but he was like, some of my friends, they're people that they had free introduced lunch when they went to school, and now when they go to X university like Westchester, the meal plans cost so much money, and it's right. Just kind of that whole thing of where students, it's hard for them to get food. Not only are certain areas, I would argue, semi food deserts, from even my time at Westchester University, of trying to even get to a grocery store without trying to take the off-campus shuttle thing that irregularly ran. So that's its own interesting thing. And then additionally, off of what you were saying with the chancellor, I mean, I would even semi disagree that he's trying to get more money, because as I've somewhat tweeted out with sort of the Pashi Defenders account, the increase that he's gotten, yes, or I wouldn't even say he's the one who's gotten it to an extent, but the increase that has, been acquired, is barely anything to what we used to even have like back when Pashi was founded, in terms of like even roughly equating like the same number of students or even less students. Back in like, the mid 1980s, we had probably like 5 to 10,000 less students than what we have now, and yet we had probably over 100 million, maybe over $200 million more in today's like dollars. So it's just kind of its own thing. Like, are you really? And then also, he's not doing anything, at least to what I see, and explicitly said so, to fight for free public higher ed. Myself and some other folks who had did some of the Pashi Defender stuff, we went to his open forum thing at Westchester University, and I tossed it in the Riverside chat because I can't toss it in the other one. But I had written a piece about like us, sort of protesting it and or asking questions and such, because I had myself and some other students hold up signs with the amount of student debt that they had. Some other folks asked some really good questions. One girl specifically, who I have no clue who she was, she decided to like share that she was like, I am an early grades prep major, I'm gonna have to go into debt, and I'm not gonna make much of any money doing this. Like, and she started crying, and like this was like a freshman, like I think at like Westchester, who she decided to share this, because this is the point where so many students are at, that it's just insane. And the fact that the chancellor literally said that he is doing nothing to advocate for free public higher education is insulting to students, it's insulting to faculty, it's insulting to staff. Because just Pennsylvania in general in our communities, because do you not want people to get an education? It doesn't seem like it. Or you just want to be able to pick and choose who does?
Well, I look at it like this. Like, I mean, first of all, I should be really clear. When I say that he's got, he sacrificed these things to get more money for Pashi, I mean this in the most cynical, kind of politically expedient way. Right, that now he has got a political talking point that he say, because we made the hard choices, we were able to get this money that Pashi needed. Right, that was the move. Right, there's no doubt exactly kind of what you said in terms of actually fully funding the state system to get us back to anywhere near to where we were even like 10, 15 years ago. Right. I mean, if you look at the 1990s is when we saw there was like this meeting point in the funding of Pashi, where in 1990s was when the state was contributing about the same amount that families and students were contributing to their cost of education. Of course, in 1983, when the state system was first founded, the state was contributing, above 65% of the total cost, where families were contributing about 25%, and there was some other stuff that was coming in, and now that's completely flipped. Now you're talking about 75% of the costs are being borne by students and their families, and 25% or under is coming from the state. And so, okay, great. In the scheme of things, if you want to measure it, okay, you got us more money. But even if you go back to the Corbett regime, right, when Corbett made all the deep cuts, cut the state system by 18% when all was said and done, really 20% at some of the universities, it was a little bit different in terms of how it came out. Say between 18 and 20%, just to keep it fair. We haven't recovered from that. Right. So, I mean, he can say whatever he's going to say. And of course, if you choose your beginning point, right, you choose your point of departure of how you measure something, right, you could tell all sorts of cool stories. Right. I mean, it's crazy. I woke up this morning and I said, let there be light. And sure enough, in about 20 minutes, there was light. Right. I mean, come on. If I can forget history and put it behind us, pretend that I'm magic and that I'm, the most charismatic individual in the world like he does. Well, then there you go. This is where we end up.
And also it makes me think, and I know, Kevin, you and I had talked about this, and I think you've even written about it before, but with the what sort of used to be of the PA Student Power Network.
The next point I was going to make. Yep.
Right, because it makes me think of that own history, which unfortunately is not there as much, to a certain extent, but it is some of the pressure, which I would argue you could say caused tuition freezes. And 100%. Why that it has still been the thing, but of who's trying to take the credit for it? The chancellor or the board of governors.
100%.
And that's why I explicitly had made comments, and I definitely urge others. I know it can be its own anxiety thing, but make comments at these board of governors meetings, make comments at your council of trustees meetings, and just say that you have frozen tuition these past 4 years, and we keep talking about the inaffordability of higher education. If you actually care about this, you shouldn't just be freezing tuition, you should be decreasing it and ultimately eliminating it, because there is no reason at a public higher education institution why it should cost money. We have had times in history where it has not. So we can go back to that. It's just about, as you said earlier, the political will. Go ahead of what you were going to say, though, with the PA Student Power Network, because you know more than I do.
No, this is the exact kind of thing. It's that those of us who worked with the PA Student Power Network for 4 years, to kind of build that organization from help build that organization from the ground up. Just by connecting students with other students, right, or faculty, or at different campuses, and then to James Hersonsky and a whole bunch of people that were kind of instrumental in actually getting that kind of up and running at a statewide level, as they were the ones who were pushing. Who put it on the agenda about free college tuition, who showed up at the board of trustees meeting, who showed up at the board of governors meeting, and were really putting on the pressure, and that helped bolster other arguments. Again, it's the same thing we've been saying on the show in everything. This is how it works, right? Direct action gets the goods, right? Direct organization, collective action gets the goods. The thing was, the other caveat we got to say with the PA Student Power Network, right? It also goes to show is this is what happens when we become our own worst enemies, right? And by we, I mean, different factions within the progressive movement, is because the PA Student Power Network was just beginning to exercise its power when internal factions, right, got in arguments over who gets to kind of be the point person on this, and then it led to the downfall of the organization. This is but this is the story of the left over and over again, that we cannot afford kind of going forward. So that's what I want to add to that. So, but I also want to kind of take a few minutes here just to take a look at what's all this stuff is connected in my mind, right? If we're going to have any chance whatsoever of fixing the problems in public education, of changing the direction of the way that we fund higher education, keeping Pennsylvania as a kind of right to abortion state, things like this. A lot is riding on this election in just over 50 days. Right. And, people have heard me talk about, how I'm nervous about some things. I just want to give you some of the latest from Real Clear Politics and look at some of the polling data of what's happening in these races. If we start just with the Senate race, right, if we're looking at Oz versus Fetterman, right, now Fetterman was up, double digits for quite some time. And now RCP, Real Clear Politics, now has this as a toss-up. Right. And yes, on average, Fetterman is still maintaining a 6.5 percentage point lead. But so, those big numbers of, what we saw, like Franklin and Marshall poll from middle of August had Fetterman up by 13. You've had other polls that are coming in closer to 4%. The Emerson poll comes in at 4%, which is about a week after that one. Susquehanna poll, which leans a little bit more conservative, has Fetterman about 5%. So we're seeing kind of a really, really tight race in what is happening here. I also want to get to here. Let me just jump down to the governor's race. We're looking at, Doug, the kind of Christian nationalist fascist, against Mastriano, against Josh Shapiro. And, by any kind of sane measure, Josh Shapiro should be just completely running away with this race. But the way that our politics work now, that's not the case. I mean, good news is that, the Real Clear Politics still has Shapiro up by about 6 percentage points. But if you look at the outliers, you have Emerson coming in with Shapiro with only a 3 percentage points lead, while you have Franklin and Marshall had Shapiro at 11 points. So, you've got that range. And now, why do I bring this up? Is like, well, I mean, for obvious reasons for here, but what I keep on saying is that, especially when in Shapiro's case, Shapiro really makes me nervous at the way his campaign has been running. I'm really interested to see what's going to happen to the polling data. There was a huge rally down in Montgomery County yesterday that actually we came about this close to going to. We were literally on to go, but then my son was not feeling well and my wife was not feeling great, and we did our COVID test and they were negative, but we were just a little bit concerned, so we didn't end up doing that. But anyways, the point was from some of the numbers, like close to 2,000 people were getting down to show up for that rally, which is pretty freaking amazing. I don't know if my numbers are off there, or somebody else might be able to tell me otherwise. But we'll see what the numbers are going to look like after this. What do polls tell us? Well, they give us a bit of information, but we also know that these polls are not measuring non-traditional voters, right? And there has been strong support of in Mastriano's camp of some of the most kind of most extremist sections of our well-organized extremist parts of our politics. And I don't believe that the polls are going to catch all those folks. On the flip side of that doesn't mean doom and gloom, because frankly, I think that the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade has just underscored the stakes for Democratic candidates, but I would say for the broad kind of progressive left Democratic, that whole non-Republican like coalition, if you will, people who would come out potentially to vote for Democrats. I think that's mobilized people in ways that I don't think people expected either. So, I guess it's more of a keep doing what we're doing. Making sure that people are going out and continuing to support the candidates that are at the local level too as well. It's absolutely critical that we're supporting local candidates that are going to help kind of turn the PA Assembly or the PA Senate blue. That's a really, I'll be honest, it's a really that's an enormous ask, right? Hope to think that we can actually turn those things, but by removing the large margin from the Republicans right now is going to be absolutely critical. And we got to ensure that, God forbid Doug Mastriano gets elected governor of the state, that we maintain the ability to cause havoc basically in the state, because we have to do that. And on the flip side of that, we have to ensure that if Shapiro is elected, right, that we don't kind of hand over a larger majority to Republicans to override any veto, right? Because right now the only thing, like Governor Tom Wolf, right, the Democratic governor of Pennsylvania, Governor Tom Wolf was the only thing standing between a protection of a broad kind of swath of rights, including voting rights, including kind of reproductive rights right across the board, and our kind of dystopian future, which we're kind of seeing unfold kind of day by day. Why? Well, because he had a veto and the Republicans couldn't override it. Right? That's it. And frankly, that's not very comforting. So, but there's that. I wish we had, if anybody's familiar with kind of polling that's going on more local lives, I'd love to see some of this stuff, but I think we're going to see that a little bit later. So,
not that, but I'll just mention just from some of the canvassing that I've been doing as of late that, I have talked to some folks who, definitely, abortion rights, reproductive rights, are big reason of why they are sort of voting, whether it is, some folks that I've even talked to that are registered Republican and are, switching for this upcoming election.
Yep.
Just on that issue, which I'm not necessarily surprised. But also, comes the thing of, for some of the folks who I've talked to of, what is it that, the Democrats are offering besides that, to a certain extent, or how much further are they actually going, to, make sure that, things are better, in any sense of the word, because it can be, good to just play defense, but then, in what way are you actually making sure, the ball moves forward?
Right. And I think that's where,
things.
that's where by, continuing to kind of push to elect more progressive Democrats, not just people that have a D next to their name, but people that are actually going to kind of advocate for policies that Democrats like to wave their flag saying we support this stuff, but when it comes time to it, we're not seeing that kind of action. That's changing, right? In part, I mentioned this in our show on Friday, is that in part we see a hollowed out Pennsylvania Democratic Party, which is actually in a weird way is allowing more local races to take controls of their campaigns in ways that we haven't seen otherwise. We also see a continuous victories, especially in the Philadelphia area, of more progressive candidates, and those kind of like left progressive candidates maintaining their seats by wide margins. All these are pointing in very, very kind of like positive directions. So it's kind of like, I think about this both and. It's like, yes, I mean, like you said, playing defense is nice. I would say at this point, playing defense is 100% necessary, right? But you play defense like, okay, you block and then you throw a punch. It's like you just don't block, right? You just don't put your gloves up in front of your face and just take the blows, right? I mean, that's kind of the idea. And we do have like a growing number of PA state legislators who are pushing the agenda. I mean, we saw Nikhil Saval, for example. His stuff on housing has been amazing. I mean, taking a conversation that, and again, I don't want to just say it's just him, because it certainly won't. He'd be the first person who would come out and say, look, it wasn't just me. There were other representatives and state senators who were behind this stuff. Obviously, coalitions on the ground of people who've been organizing around housing for quite some time. But he was brought to like literally tears, right? The fact that they were able to kind of have a meaningful impact, right, on people that were struggling with housing, right? I mean, that's real. That's real stuff. And, Nikhil Saval, right, is one of the reasons why that happened, right? The people who have campaigned for Nikhil Saval, who've organized with Nikhil Saval, who've been on the ground organizing in Philadelphia for years, continue to push on that campaign. We need more of that, right? I mean, the work that, we could go down the list of what kind of some progressives in the state have done, and it's really impressive, right? A lot of it's, again, there's limits to what you can do when you've got that kind of dominant, like, Republican control over the state houses. But we're seeing a disproportionate positive impact by those folks who are elected, who actually are advocating for things that people need and want.
So. Also, just to echo with what Emily just said, you stand a better chance of getting some GOP voters supporting candidates who are progressive based on issues discussion rather than pointing out the extremists of their own party. I can definitely agree with that with a few cases of when I've, just been canvassing recently. Like, I talked to one woman who said that she is a vet and, is sort of like disabled. She had a walker that she was walking around with, and she was, telling me of how she felt, sort of being like, the vet that's saying, I felt better in Trump's America kind of thing, because I felt more respected, sort of thing, and then she's talking about her issues in terms of like her health care and such. And then I, just start just saying like, hey, what are your thoughts on like, giving health care to everyone? She's like, yeah, that's great. That would be awesome. And just like having that discussion and and bringing up that issue, like just in that way, can very much sway some people, or you can actually have that conversation, but it really takes those sort of, one-on-one, approaches in a fairly, non-confrontational way, and mind you, this is someone who was saying that, there are too many people coming over the border. We shouldn't be giving these benefits to these people who are illegally coming over the border, like sort of stuff. But then if I just ask her about like, healthcare, specifically, I can potentially get her to, maybe vote that way, and it really is that discussion there. Another thing that I just want to point out, sort of going back to the abortion rights issue that I find is interesting. There was one day when I was canvassing, and I actually saw another canvasser who was a pro-life canvasser from Susan B. Anthony, a list
Yeah,
Pro-Life
yeah.
America. And I just found it wild of seeing, there are, some of those folks out, I guess, and, had like a door hanger thing, talking about how radical supposedly John Fetterman is on abortion, or Josh Shapiro and such. And, on the other side of it, it showed, or it just said like, you know, it showed one person, and this was like totally fake, but like one person that said like, I'm pro-life and I'm pro-choice, and then it said, but we can agree on reasonable limits on abortion. And it's like, what are you talking about? Like, that is not at all the conversation. Like, I spoke to a woman who said, when canvassing, that she was like, I'm personally pro-life, and I had a daughter when I was like very young. My parents like allowed me to choose, but I chose, to have the kid. But she was like, and this was a woman who was like 80 or 90, and she was like, but I feel like everyone's entitled to that choice. And it's just wild. And then seeing like that mailer or like door hanger thing in comparison, and which is exactly why we need people who are going and having these conversations with folks, and making sure people are aware that this is a big issue when it comes to Pennsylvania specifically, in both of these races, and also with local races too. So yeah.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Well, hey man, listen, I appreciate you taking some time out and calling in. It's great. I really love the whole call-in format, and I just I've been looking for ways to make it even more streamlined for folks to do this, and hopefully that I'm gonna be able to do it some more, because I'd love to hear from more folks for a kind of call-in session. But man, keep up the fight. Congratulations on what what you've been able to accomplish down there with the cancel student or student. The lunch debt cancellation that you've been
Yeah.
able to accomplish, and all the work that's going on. Appreciate you taking time out tonight, man, and we'll see you on the flip side.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much.
Oh, you got it, man. Thanks, Nick. And yeah, like I like to hear folks' feedback too as well on say the call and stuff. Would people like to have that as more part of the show? Maybe once a month, being able to kind of just do a call-in session, maybe promote it a little bit more up front so people knew that we're going to do the call-in. I know that everything was been really last minute on my end, kind of late. So yeah, be curious what people's thoughts are. You could shoot me an email. I could drop notes in for tonight and so on. I also want to let me just kind of put this up here too. I want to give a shout out to Will Bunch's book, Will Bunch and his book, I should say, After the Ivory Tower Falls. A lot of the stuff we talked about tonight is going to be echoed in Will Bunch's book. I love this book. You've heard me talk about it before. Well worth it. He was just recently on the Majority Report. Did a great job in the Majority Report. He was on Rick Smith's show, that kind of thing. And I would definitely check out his book if you can, for that. The other thing I want to kind of give a brief shout out tonight, if you give me just one sec, before I call it for the evening. Come on. Here we go. If you head on over to the Bucks County Beacon, the buckscountybeacon.com, as you know, the Bucks County Beacon has become one of the most critical, progressive voices in Bucks County and beyond. Right now, for the month of September, they've got a goal to raise a chunk of change to help keep the Bucks County Beacon going. And not just going, thriving. It's going. That's not even a question, right? It's going like like a bat out of hell. The question is how do we go about making sure that that it's going to continue to grow and thrive? That's really kind of what I'm most interested in more than anything else, is to making sure that we have this kind of amazing resource continue to support it. So now through September, they're trying to raise a bunch of money. You can head on over to the buckscountybeacon.com, and you can go ahead and hit that little support us button. If you're looking for people to commit right now, they're kind of really pushing to see if you get people to commit for $10 a month, right? You think about if you're subscribed subscribing to a newspaper. This is actually a bargain compared to what you would have to pay if you're just for regular print, a print publication. This is something that'll make sure that Bucks County Beacon will keep going strong. And it's also like a message that we can all send, right? I mean, it's a message that we could send is like, this is the kind of news that we want, right? This is the kind of news that we're willing to support. This is the kind of publication that we need more of, right? And we need to support writers, right? We need to support like Cyril, who's been putting all this stuff together, making sure that we're kind of stiffening the backs and supporting the spine of the Bucks County Beacon to ensure that is going to continue to grow stronger and stronger by the day. So you can head on over to buckscountybeacon.com. You can hit the little support the Beacon button. You become a monthly supporter for, $5, $10, $15, $20 a month. And they're really doing some great work there. So you just go buckscountybeacon.com. I'm going to throw it right now here in the show notes if you want to go directly, or not show notes, the tonight's chat. If you want to go right there through a link to go and kind of support the work that they're doing. They got some great pieces out of here. And, like you've seen, is that what the Bucks County Beacon has helped us do here too at Raging Chicken, right, is to kind of, build this kind of connection with these folks, with the writers that are there. Is that we've had folks that I've had on the show who have gone on and kind of are writing for the Beacon. And we've got kind of writers at the Beacon who are publishing there who are coming on this show. This is the kind of work that I've been wanting to do in progressive media for quite some time, right? And the more that we build that out, the better, right? The more that we start sharing resources among progressive media groups, the better. The more that we can get more eyes on the writers that are doing the kind of critical work that we need, the better. The more that we can cast light on and put a shining spotlight on the community organizations that are doing the kind of like the grassroots organizing that are going to that are having really tangible results in building organization and building power here in Bucks County and beyond. I mean, can't think of a better place to put my money in to kind of support the work that's happening at the Beacon, in addition to helping those organizations on the ground. So anyways, that's my last plug for the evening. Now it's about time that I head on over and make sure I start getting my kids ready for bed and getting myself ready for bed, because now since it's back to school, that it's 5 a.m. wake up time once again. So that's where we go. Anyways, look, I appreciate the discussion. I appreciate the active chat that we have. As always, thank you, Emily. Thank you, Nick. Thank you everybody who kind of showed up tonight. I really appreciate it. And share us out. Let everybody know about what we do. And we're going to see you again on Friday. Looks like we're going to be back to guests next Monday. I've got 2 irons in the fire right now. Hopefully one of them is gonna come out. If not, I've got a whole bunch of other ideas, but I want to hear from some of these folks first. I'm going to try to make sure that I get some local voices, candidates that are running for office, organizers on the ground here in Bucks County, and across Pennsylvania who are doing the critical work. We're going to have some authors that we're going to be on this month, and some more of those folks who are digging into right-wing extremist research and kind of uncovering where the funding and the organization behind the extremist politics, the kind of neo-fascist, neo-Confederate, Christian nationalists, whatever the hell you want to call them, and how they're kind of infecting kind of our culture and our society and our schools. So there you have it. So for tonight, this is Kevin Mahoney, creator and founder of Raging Chicken. I am so pleased that I'm back in the seat tonight. It feels like the right place to be, even though I'm still pretty exhausted from the first couple of weeks of school. So it is what it is, you know what I'm saying? Anyways, this is Kevin Mahoney, creator and founder of Raging Chicken. Stay tuned for info on what we're doing next week. I hope to see you Friday for our Friday Politics Roundup. Until then, keep it going. Keep up the fight. See you in the streets. See ya.